Why it sucks to be a Vestal Virgin in ancient Rome. You're 6 years old. A priest walks through your household, inspects you the way a buyer inspects livestock, and tells your father you've been chosen. Not by him, not by you, by the state itself. Within days, you'll be taken from your family, stripped of your name in the eyes of Roman law, and moved into a house at the heart of the city. A house you'll live in for the next 30 years, guarding a fire that must never, under any circumstances, go out. You are about to become a Vestal Virgin, and everyone in Rome will tell you it's the single greatest honor a woman can receive. They're not entirely lying, but they're not telling you the whole truth either. Today we're breaking down why being a Vestal Virgin in ancient Rome was a position of extraordinary power, and an absolutely terrifying trap. Let's start with how you even got here. Rome maintained exactly 6 Vestal Virgins at any given time, serving the goddess Vesta, guardian of the hearth and home. When a position opened, through death, retirement, or scandal, the Pontifex Maximus, Rome's highest religious official, would personally select 20 candidate girls between the ages of 6 and 10 from patrician families in good standing. Note what's already happening here. You were never asked. Your father was asked, or more accurately informed. Roman law technically required parental consent, but refusing the Pontifex Maximus when he selected your daughter was not something most fathers were eager to do. This was the ultimate honor for a Roman family, and turning it down could look like an insult to the gods themselves. The chosen candidates had to meet a strict list of requirements. Both parents alive. No physical or speech defects. Freeborn on both sides of the family, going back generations. Essentially, you needed to be the ideal specimen of Roman aristocracy, pure, unblemished, and completely without a say in your own fate. From that pool of 26 to 10-year-olds, one girl was drawn, sometimes literally by lot. And the moment your name was chosen, everything about your former life ended. Here's something most people don't realize about becoming a Vestal. Legally, you died. The moment a girl was selected, she was formally removed from her father's legal authority, the patria potestas that governed every other woman and child in Rome. This sounds like liberation, and in some very real ways it was. A Vestal Virgin was the only category of adult Roman woman who could own property in her own name, make her own will, and appear in court without a male guardian speaking for her. But the way Rome achieved this legal independence was strange and unsettling. She was treated ceremonially as if she had died and been reborn as a kind of sacred ward of the state. She left her family. Her original name in a legal sense stopped mattering, and she moved permanently into the House of the Vestals, right beside the Roman Forum, at the literal center of political power. For the next 30 years, this building was her entire world. The core job of a Vestal Virgin was deceptively simple to describe and brutally demanding to actually perform. Keep the sacred fire of Vesta burning at all times, without exception. This wasn't a symbolic duty. Romans genuinely believed the eternal flame was tied to the survival of the state itself. If the fire went out, it was considered a catastrophic omen, a sign the gods had withdrawn their protection from Rome. And the blame for that catastrophe would fall entirely on whichever Vestal had been on duty when it happened. Vestals worked in rotating shifts, day and night, tending the flame, and the responsibility never fully lifted. Beyond the fire itself, they performed a wide range of religious duties, preparing ritual cakes for state ceremonies, guarding sacred objects so secret that even a Vestal's own knowledge of them was considered dangerous to reveal, and safeguarding wills, treaties, and important legal documents that powerful Romans trusted to the Vestals, specifically because their house was considered inviolable, untouchable by political corruption or theft. This made the Vestals genuinely powerful. Senators, generals, even emperors later on needed to stay on good terms with them. A Vestal could pardon a condemned criminal she happened to encounter on the street purely by touching him. She had a reserved seat at gladiatorial games, second only to the emperor's own box. She could move through the city in a carriage, a privilege denied to virtually every other woman in Rome. But every one of these privileges rested on a single absolute condition.
For the entire 30 years of her service, A Vestal Virgin was required to remain celibate. This wasn't a soft social expectation. It was a legal requirement enforced with one of the most horrifying punishments in the entire Roman legal system. If a Vestal was found guilty of breaking her vow of chastity, she wasn't executed by conventional means. Roman religious law forbade the shedding of a Vestal's blood since her body was considered sacred. So instead, the punishment was this. She was sealed alive inside an underground chamber, given a small lamp, a little bread, a little water, and left there. The chamber was then filled in with earth, and she was left to die slowly, alone, in the dark, technically without anyone having directly killed her. This punishment, known as Poena Cooli's grim counterpart for Vestals, live burial, was rare, but it was real, and it happened multiple times across Roman history. The man accused of violating her vow, meanwhile, was typically flogged to death in the Forum, brutal but quick by comparison. Now here's what made the system genuinely terrifying if you were the Vestal in question. The accusation alone could destroy you, regardless of guilt. Rome was a superstitious society, and any bad omen, a plague, a military defeat, a natural disaster, could trigger a search for the cause. And a Vestal suspected of impurity was a very convenient explanation for the gods' anger. Several Vestals across Roman history were accused, tried, and buried alive during periods of political crisis or public panic, when the state needed someone to blame, and a scapegoat with enormous symbolic power was exactly what desperate politicians wanted. You could do everything right for 29 years and still lose your life to an accusation you had no real way to defend yourself against. Set aside the extreme scenario of accusation for a moment, and consider what ordinary daily existence actually looked like. You lived inside the House of the Vestals for 3 decades. Your service was formally divided into 3 10-year stages, 10 years learning the duties, 10 years actually performing them, and 10 years training the next generation of young Vestals. Your entire adult life, from childhood through your late 30s, unfolded inside one religious institution, under constant observation, bound by a vow you'd agreed to, technically at age 6 to 10. You could not marry, you could not have romantic relationships, you could not simply decide the role wasn't for you and walk away. Vestals who left before completing their term, even without any accusation of impurity, faced serious social stigma and legal complications. Your entire identity for the most productive decades of your life was subordinated to the flame, the rituals, and the reputation of Rome itself. And unlike almost every other position of religious or political authority in Rome, a Vestal's power was entirely conditional. It existed only as long as her chastity remained unquestioned. One accusation, true or false, and every privilege, the carriage, the reserved seating, the property rights, the pardoning power, evaporated instantly, replaced by trial and potentially a slow death underground. And yet, here's the part of the story that makes the Vestals genuinely remarkable and worth understanding on their own terms rather than purely as victims. After completing her 30 years of service, a Vestal was released from her vows. She received a substantial pension from the state, was permitted to marry if she chose to, and retained significant property and social status for the rest of her life. Very few actually chose to leave and marry. Many stayed on at the temple by choice. Now senior figures training the next generation, respected elders in an institution they had spent their entire adult lives building expertise in. More than that, throughout Roman history, individual Vestals wielded real documented political influence. They negotiated on behalf of families facing exile. They intervened directly with emperors to save condemned individuals. During times of civil war and political crisis, opposing factions in Rome specifically sought Vestal endorsement because the Vestal's reputation for impartiality and sacred authority carried genuine weight that even armed generals had to respect. The historian Plutarch specifically noted that a Vestal encountering a condemned man being led to execution could save his life on the spot, simply by declaring under oath that the meeting was unplanned. Emperors deposited their wills with the Vestals precisely because everyone in Rome, across every political faction, trusted the Vestal's house as genuinely, uniquely incorruptible. In a society that offered ordinary Roman women almost no independent legal identity, no property rights, no public voice, and no protection from a husband's or father's absolute authority, the Vestal Virgins were paradoxically some of the only women in the entire ancient Mediterranean world who could own property, testify in court unaided, move freely through public life, and wield direct influence over the most powerful men in Rome. That power simply came at the cost of 30 years of celibacy, total surveillance, and a legal system willing to bury you alive on suspicion alone. Being a Vestal Virgin meant becoming one of the most respected and genuinely powerful women in the ancient world, chosen as a child, stripped of your family, and handed authority that most Roman men could never dream of. It also meant 3 decades of your life spent guarding a flame that, if it ever went dark, could be blamed entirely on you, and living under a vow so absolute that breaking it, even on unproven suspicion, could mean dying alone underground in the dark with nothing but a lamp and a little bread. Extraordinary power and total vulnerability welded together into a single 30-year sentence you never asked to serve. If you enjoyed this video, there are more stories on the channel about what it was like to be someone completely different in a completely different era. See you in the next one.